Things can get better, and if you let them, they usually do. Earlier this week, I finished End of Watch, the third book in the Bill Hodges trilogy by Stephen King, and probably as a surprise to no one, I really liked it. Stephen King continues to just write books that just vibe with me, and I just really enjoy, and End of Watch is no different. While I did not love the fact that this took a supernatural turn compared to his two previous entries in this trilogy, I have to say that the way that he wrapped this book up, the characters, their arcs, and everything else was really, really well done. And I have almost come around to the fact that he chose to go the paranormal route instead of something more grounded. Almost. I didn't entirely love the change, but I'm almost convinced that it was a good change. Having said all that, everything else about this book I thought worked really well. Starting with the character arcs. These characters, Bill Hodges, Holly, Jerome, are ones I've come to just kind of fall in love with since the Mr. Mercedes days. And I've come to just really appreciate Stephen King as a character writer. This guy has an immense talent for writing just different groups of people across all ages very well, and I feel like that is kind of the highlight here in this book. Stephen King just shows this ability to write characters that are relatable, that you want to spend time with, and that you feel emotion for when bad things happen to them. So that is really well executed here, and I felt like all of their arcs that began in Mr. Mercedes were very well wrapped up in this book. And while there obviously is still room for these characters to continue to have stories in the future, I also wouldn't be upset if this is where we left off with them because it was so well handled. So the character arcs and character work is exceptional as always. The pacing here is also really good. Stephen King is kind of known as someone with a pacing problem, and while I have always enjoyed the pacing in his books, he does tend to ramble and go on rants and write really, really long books, right? But the Bill Hodges trilogy is almost the exception to that because these are really tight, like 400 to 500 page thrillers, and End of Watch is no different. Like, this is a really tight, heart-pounding thriller. This had me genuinely concerned for the characters, as the previous entries have. And I don't know, like, I just thought that was really, really great. And the way that tied into the atmosphere, the pace in the atmosphere, which the atmosphere here is dark, it's dreadful. You know, it's Stephen King, so duh, that's what it's gonna be. Just really worked to create the ambiance in this book, and how that tied into like the thematic message here and what the point of this story is, all worked really, really well to create a really good novel. And that is something I really have to say with this book specifically, and with Stephen King in general, but this book specifically, is that the way he deals with really heavy issues, the issue in this book being teenage suicide, I find to be really, really amazing, because so many authors will attempt to have a conversation about things like depression or suicide or anxiety or alcoholism or addiction or whatever. And while I think their heart is in the right place, they don't always handle it with the best care. And I think that Stephen King actually executed the topic very well here. It's obviously a really heavy topic. This is something that is an epidemic here in the United States, and it's an issue that people do not talk about enough, especially in the age of cyberbullying and the internet, just how bad it can be. But despite being, like a 65-year-old guy at the time of writing this, I think Stephen King handled this with a lot of grace and with a lot of nuance. And while the circumstances are supernatural for the reason why these things are happening, I still felt like it was a fairly well written aspect of the story. So I'm gonna give him his flowers and his props by saying, good job, dude, for writing a really heavy topic in a way that, I don't know, I at least thought was well handled. Maybe others will disagree with me there, but I thought it was well handled. So yeah, like overall, I just felt like, again, Stephen King's kind of firing on all cylinders. And while this isn't my favorite book of his, I'm glad to have read this trilogy because I really enjoyed spending my time with these characters. I like their character arcs. I really like the villains in this trilogy. I think they are some of his more grounded villains, and yet they are also arguably some of the most despicable of the ones I've read. And I don't know. I really like the way that this was all tied together in a nice bow that allows for more stories, but it's also a great way to kind of end at least this part of the journey. So overall, good book. Gonna give it like an 8.3 out of 10, and I'm looking forward to more Stephen King.